Well, good evening, all. Welcome to Axanar Confidential 113. And I am joined tonight by two gentlemen from Trekkers Against Bullying, Rex Wood and Ed O'Connell. Gentlemen, how are you doing?
Doing great. The
Doing
opening,
well, thank you.
that music, I'm sitting there going, wow, and just really charging me up with the music behind me. So
Yeah, Dana Wagner, who manages the bridge set, he's the one that did that amazing Aries Studios piece for us years ago. So we've kept it going. Hope everyone's doing well. We'll check in on the comments real quick. This is kind of a new time for us too. We usually have been going at 10 o'clock Eastern, 7 Pacific, but when we go to 7, we tend to get Europeans popping in because it's midnight there. So some of the more industrious ones will stay up. Hello, James McCoy. How are you, Hermano? How are you? Good. You just Mike Schussel saw the bridge update. Yeah, it looks even better. The bridge is even looking better because today we put in our $1,200 85-inch monitor as our view screen, and we also and Dana carpeted the captain's chair, which is really good because it looks that there's just a little texture there now. And he sent me a photo that looked really amazing. So so we're real excited. Oh, there's Paul calling in from St. Simon's. Well, you're always down in the really cool areas of Georgia, so I'm jealous. Paul is one of our volunteers, and his daughter will be appearing on the bridge next week. So we are a week away from shooting, less than a week, because our call is 6 a.m. next Friday. So we are less than a week away from shooting the next. This is a 3-day shoot, and I got to tell you, it is going so well. We are fully crewed. Our crew list is set. Here we are a week ahead of things, and there are no holes in our crew list. Everyone is confirmed. The actors are all confirmed. They're all flying in. Be careful, Paul. We got Ed's from New Jersey, so you have to be nice. We're excited. Crystal, who runs Aries Studios, is also going to be is also a producer on Axanar. So she's in charge. She's in charge of food, basically, and all the volunteers and the food. That's but yeah, the volunteers, I'm not worried. The food, I'm worried about. So, but we have a good budget for food. Knock wood, it all goes well there. And whoever is Facebook user from Australia, you have to make sure you authorize StreamYard to get your information from Facebook. That way we'll find out who you are and you won't just be anonymous. And there's, of course, Wilhelm. How are you? So anyway, just to finalize it next week. So we're shooting Friday, Saturday, Sunday. Interestingly enough, one of my acting friends who I went to class with 10 years ago, and it's hard to believe that was 10 years ago, but 10 years ago, she and I were in the same acting class at Howard Fines. Howard Fine is one of the top acting coaches in Hollywood. As a matter of fact, he just coached, what's his name? The guy who just won the Golden Globe for Elvis. He was one of his students. He's Bradley Cooper's acting coach. He's Chris Pine's acting coach. So Tina and I were in the same class, and she moved here a couple of years ago just because the better environment for actors. And it's funny, I've been trying to reach her for like 6 months, and she wasn't replying on Facebook. And yesterday she's like, "Hey, Alec, I never go on Facebook." So we started chatting, and I said, I told her what we were doing. And I said, I've got a role that you need to audition for. And it's the Vulcan captain in the script. And I said, why don't you, and I told her about it and everything. And she knows Star Trek. When she was a kid, she saw the original, not a huge Star Trek fan, but she knows it. And I said, why don't you do an audition tape for us? I said, if do it this weekend. And I said, I'll even do a Zoom with you if you want me to work with you on it. I said, and send us a tape because we could fit you in. And so, and she's Asian too. And so and I like the multi-ethnicity of Vulcans that has evolved over the years. You know, we got Tuvok, so we have African Americans, and a lot of Vulcans always looked, you know, some of them had an Asian look to them, and I like that. So I was like, yeah, why don't we give this a shot? So I'm waiting to get her tape, and if so, I mean, in the meantime, my makeup person, that was her chiming in there before, is trying to work source the right wig or cut a wig to work, and I just ordered ears today, and so we're preparing them. We might fit her into which would also take one actor off our LA shoot schedule, which would be huge. If I can get rid of the LA, you know, if I can lower the number of actors in LA, freeze our schedule up, we might be able to do LA in 2 days instead of 3 and lower the cost and everything. So anyway, that's what's happening on our end. The bridge is doing great. The studio's looking great. I just real excited. So here's Crispin Kane. How are you? Greetings from Mendocino County. Oh, so beautiful and so expensive. I love I'll tell you, and I spent 20 years in LA in LA, and I love traveling. I love driving up and down California. The thing I love most about California is not two things. One is San Diego, because it is the best climate in the country. You're nodding as if you're a Navy man, or
no, Army all the way.
All right.
I just have a friend in San Diego, so I know.
Oh, okay. So you know it's great. But the thing I love about California is the topography just changes all the time. You could be on the coast, and it's, you know, you got the beaches in the south, and you got the rocky, you know, coastline in the middle and the north. You got the farmland on the interior. You got mountains. You could be in LA and go skiing in 2 hours in the mountains. That's what I love about California, is really glorious. But there is my good dear friend Alexander Richardson, who is our art director. How are you doing, sir? And someone you're new here, so hello from the UK, hello back. So anyway, okay, so let's get into why you're here to talk about Trekkers Against Bullying. And why don't one of you start off and kind of just, how did this start? Let's go there. How did Trekkers Against Bullying start?
Okay, so Trekkers Against Bullying has actually been around for a while. It actually started around 2010. And it started with that. Kind of shows you how long bullying, and really it's something that's been going on forever, but that was when it really came out strong. Started in 2010, and I was not part of the organization then. It was a couple other people that were running it, and they started out doing some things. There's some videos that are still running out on YouTube now of some of the stars that they actually went out and interviewed and talked to about bullying and stuff like that. The group kind of faded out for a little while, and there wasn't a whole lot going on. I was involved with another organization called Starfleet Command, which is another big organization of people, of course, with Star Trek. And I met somebody there that had been involved with it, but it was just completely kind of dead at that point. Nothing was going on with it. And I started asking them, hey, you know what are you doing with this? Because this is such a worthwhile cause that we need to see about resurfacing, looking at reconstituting it and getting back out there again. What I think is kind of cool about TAB is we were actually around before Pop Culture Hero, which is Chase's group. Okay. And it's always been geared more towards adult bullying than so much the child bullying stuff like that. There's a lot of groups that are covering that, but a lot of times people don't understand that there is a lot of adult bullying going on out there. And I think they think adults can take care of themselves, you know, all that kind of stuff. And that's not necessarily true at all. So I started working with myself. And it's been myself for a little while, probably about a year and a half. It was just me. And then I brought Ed on board and brought a few other people. So Ed is actually, he helps me, but he also is a producer of our podcast. So we started the podcast then at that point to start drawing more attention. So we kind of look at the mission of what we wanted to do with Trekkers Against Bullying. And we decided that we wanted to take a little bit different stand. We didn't want to be the talking heads. Okay. You get a lot of people that will get on and all they do is they talk about it, but they don't want to do anything about it. And so one of the things we had decided was that we were going to, and we usually eradicate all the time in anything that we do, that our job is to eradicate bullying within the science fiction fandom. Because, it's not just Star Trek, it's all around. I mean, it's really amazing where it's gone. Now, Star Trek has always bothered me about that because Star Trek is where it should never be at. With everything that's gone on with Star Trek, it should always be, we should always be getting along. If we want to have that culture of Star Trek down the road, we've got to get rid of some of these things out of our lives now, or we're never going to make it. So we started talking about it, and we're like, what are we going to do with it? How far are we going to go? And we're like, you know what? We're going to look at what's out there and we're going to address it. And we're going to, in situations, call people out, on it and see what we can do. See what we can do as that neutral person. Because one thing we want to do is we're not affiliated with anybody. And, Alec, you and I have talked about that. We're not affiliated with anybody except for one group, and that's the Federation. And they're just, they've been around for a while, and they're actually a Gene Roddenberry group that does a lot of philanthropy projects. And they kind of took us on there to kind of help us out at that point, to give us a little bit more exposure. So we decided that we were going to do something like look at what's going on and be that neutral organization that could actually go in and talk to both sides in a situation, whether it's two organizations, whether it's two people. We wanted to be able to go and talk to them and try to start healing some things. And since there's been so much in the fandom lately across the board with the new Star Trek and stuff like that, we started going, you know what? We got to do something. We've got to do something for the fandom and solve the problem. We should all be getting along. So we started getting more. We started the podcast now, which we're only into our 4th podcast, but I'm really happy with that. Matter of fact, we just had one debut last night that had Michelle Hurd on it. And we're starting the conversations, but not just the conversations, but actually what has to go behind the conversation. Like I said, we don't want to be the people that just talk about it. We want to be the people that are actually looking at what's going on out there. So, like Alec, you and I have talked about that, looking at situations, and there's a situation here. We've talked about it. There's a situation that's lasted a while, which, there's people on both sides. And it's like, what can we do by being that neutral person and looking at things, and how can we help solve the rift that's happening? Because it's not just, it's hurting all the fans. There's people on both sides, and it shouldn't be about that, And so we're calling these people, we're talking to them, we're trying to figure out how we can be that source to kind of be a calming factor in the whole thing. And that's kind of where TAB is at right now. That's kind of our mission. We've got 2 different Facebook pages. One is a group, and a lot of people that have come over to the group. And then we also have a community page. So the group page is more for the people who really want to be involved, the people who really want to be the people that are helping us search this out and seeing what's out there and alerting us to things that we can get involved with. And then also representing the organization throughout the world. That's our goal at some point, is to actually have associations with different organizations that are TAB. What do I want to call them, Ed? We were talking about.
We're still trying to come up with a name for our individual groups that align with TAB.
Right.
We don't want it to be an even partnership, because one way or another, we don't want to get involved with something.
Right.
First off, let me answer Wilhelm's question. The podcast is named Tab Nation.
Yep.
TAB Nation.
Yep.
One word, it's in the top. And the other thing is, like I was saying before, I have a local New York City Star Trek community. We're a supporter of TAB, have been since the beginning. As the captain of the ship, it's kind of obvious because I'm involved in the TAB as a group that I brought my group in there. but we're not an affiliation. We're not a partner with it. We just support them. We have to come up with a name to describe these supporters, which out, we don't want to make it an even thing because Tab stays out of, if my group has a problem with someone else's group, Tab should be able to come in and help with the problem. But if one group is a partner with Tab and one's not, there's an obvious bias there.
Yeah.
So we're trying to keep that bias out by saying, yes, you support us, but you're not part of us as a community, a large community. Not that we're keeping people out. We're just trying to keep that neutrality in.
Yeah. That way we're not, because we can't do the job of Tab if we are, involved intimately, not intimately, but with somebody else. Okay. We have to do it as that separate entity out there. And so that's what's, like I said, really important that we do that kind of stuff, is that we make sure that we're not affiliated. And that was one thing that I even, you and I even talked about when we started talking a little bit, is we're not affiliated, and I won't become affiliated anybody like that. Okay.
It's like, it's like right now I'm in an arbitration, and there's a neutral third party.
Yeah.
And that's who, we both agreed that's who you use for the arbitration, and they're not aligned with anyone, right? They're going to just be like, that's why you use them. That's why you use a mediator, right? And if you feel, whether you feel like you're being bullied or you feel like, you just want a review, having a neutral third party is the way to go. And someone without an agenda other than fairness, right? And that's what if I believe in the way I'm conducting myself in this sphere, then I should be, like open the books and say, come on, look. I mean, the nice thing was I had whoops, sorry. That's Dana. He doesn't know I'm broadcasting. I had an incident a couple years ago where a YouTube influencer just went ballistic on us, on my girlfriend and I, and called my girlfriend very nasty names, and went after me because she said I had bullied her. And you saw what it was, and I'm happy to show it to anyone. Say I was having a discussion with someone, and about a sexual predator, and and she didn't want to listen to anything, and I said okay, and she made it out like I was attacking her. I was like, adults have conversations,
right? They do, and we're all passionate people. We're all passionate, and we're emotional people.
Yeah.
And different people handle it different ways. It's where it goes beyond that. Okay. And that's where some people don't recognize that. And there are people out there that just don't recognize they're doing it, and so somebody has to say, hey, listen, there's a real problem here. So we want to be that organization that actually can help with those kind of things, on top of just helping the people that are being bullied separately, being able to offer them some advice, maybe put them in the right direction of getting help. We are not a therapy type organization. I don't have doctors that are in with us at that point, but we do have places that we may be able to direct them at that point. But we also want to be the supporter. And one thing that you will see with our podcasts that are a lot different, if you're expecting to talk about Star Trek on our podcast, not going to happen. Okay. We may talk about an episode that kind of works with it. Okay. But we have Star Trek stars on, and that's the first thing. And I tell them is this is going to be different for you, because I'm not going to ask you what phaser you used in season 2, episode 5. What I want is I want to talk about what's going on out there and how you're feeling and what you're seeing, and if you have any past of it. And we're finding out that a lot of Star Trek actors have been bullied when they were younger. I mean, Michelle Hurd was wonderful, and to listen to her talk about her father and some of the stuff that happened with him, and then the stuff that happened with her. There's just the people that would, because she has a deeper voice, they would really make fun of her. So, that's a great episode to really see. You know how you sometimes find and you know this, Alex, you find your voice on a podcast, right?
Yeah.
And you're sitting there going, look, I'm finally finding the voice. And she was on there and we started talking about that kind of stuff. And that episode, which is up on YouTube right now, and you can go see it, but it actually starts to hit exactly what we want to talk about. But yeah, if I had somebody on our Facebook page the other day, are we going to talk about Star Trek in here?
I saw that. I saw that.
Like,
and I was like, there's like a gazillion groups to talk about Star Trek. This is about bullying.
Right. And yeah, we are a bunch of fans. Absolutely, we are fans, and we're fans of one of the most wonderful shows that actually needs to be taking this on. But I kind of laughed at that because I told Ed at one time, I said, well, if I do a podcast, I came up with a nice name for it. It's going to be Star Trek. I was going to call it just another Star Trek podcast. Okay, because they're and not being mean, but there are a lot of them. But anyway, we wanted something different with ours. We wanted to have more substance to it. And yeah, I could sit there and talk with the stars forever about certain things. But when it comes down to it, we want them to talk about their experiences and then what they're seeing and have that talk to make them aware too of what's going on. There are some of the celebrities that don't even realize some of this is going on.
Yeah, I mean, they've been bullied in their life separate from what their role in the show is.
Yeah.
But they don't see fans there saying, well, if you're a fan of 2009, you're not a Star Trek fan because you haven't seen real Star Trek yet. I'm sorry. It was released by Paramount Pictures. It says Star Trek.
Yeah.
I'm not a fan.
Yep.
I'll say that all day long. But it's still Star Trek.
Right.
Yeah.
It's still
If that's your only entrance into Star Trek, you're a Star Trek fan.
Absolutely. And that's the whole thing about it is where we're seeing like the episode, the back and forth bitter. And the thing is, everybody has an opinion. Okay. And that's fine. But when you take it too far is where it has a problem. I get it. There's some people that don't like some of the new stuff. Okay. I'm not a big fan of some of it at times, but I grew up, and I think you did too, Alex, and Ed, you were a little later, but we grew up when Star Trek, we didn't have anything. We had the animation series or we had reruns. And so we are the ones that should actually be happy that we're seeing stuff. Like I said, we don't always have to agree with it or how it's written or things like that. But at the same time, it is on and we did not have it. And now I look at people and I go, quit complaining.
Oh my God, that's exactly it. And yes, and to draw another parallel, when everyone was bitching about Batman versus Superman, that movie, so many people were complaining about it. Okay, it wasn't a perfect movie, but I enjoyed it. I'm the kind that I enjoy these things. I don't, and I was saying, I was going around telling people, are you effing kidding me? Batman versus Superman? 20 years ago, we would have killed for that movie. We couldn't even imagine that you would have Batman and Superman in one movie, let alone the Avengers. So I don't want to hear you bitch about it.
Going back to Batman and Superman, people lost their mind because in the back of the I Am Legend Times Square scene, there was a bulletin board of Batman and Superman in the same movie. And people went ape shit over that billboard. That they just happened to have the rights to put that billboard up. Yeah. It wasn't a movie. It wasn't a plot. It wasn't a sequel coming out.
No, it was just, I know, that was great. And people don't appreciate it. So when all these new Star Treks come out, I actually did a video called In Defense of Alex Kurtzman. And I did it about 2 years ago, I think. And it was basically me saying, look at people, every Star Trek sucks for 2 seasons. Everyone, all right? Different levels. I would argue Deep Space Nine isn't awful the first 2 seasons, but it's just not great, But the first 2 seasons of Next Generation are just trash, right? So it always takes a little while to catch on. So if you look at Discovery and look at the first 2 seasons of Discovery and say, ugh, but what was Alex Kurtzman's 3rd season of Star Trek? Picard.
Yeah.
Right.
And I'm like, that wasn't bad. It wasn't great, but it wasn't bad. And then season 2 is, probably a little uneven, but then we get Strange New Worlds. And what I loved is I said, hey, listen, you were all bitching about Star Trek Discovery. And what happens in season 2? They hit this high note with Captain Pike. And what does Kurtzman do? He goes, I'm listening to all the fans, and he green lights Captain Pike.
Series,
right? Yeah. They literally listened to all the fans. Because everyone loved Anson Mount. Everyone loved him. And they said, let's make that show. Right? So stop bitching. They listen to you. And then everyone loves Lower Decks. Right?
And not only did they listen, they changed the format of Strange New Worlds back to the original format.
Right.
I'm not a fan of Discovery.
Yep.
But Strange New Worlds hits me just like the original series did.
It totally does.
It's right there. And I'll tell you what, Strange New Worlds has the best first season of any live action TV show since the original series. And there's nothing to compare the original series to in the first season because it was so groundbreaking.
Yeah, no, I agree. I'm going to say, listen, and Paragon Rex, we can agree to disagree, right? That's the beauty of Star Trek.
That's the whole idea here. And that's what I'm talking about is that I don't want to call tab trolls because we're not. We go around and we look at stuff, okay? We go around and find examples of stuff like this. And when we're sitting there seeing what we're seeing, and a lot of it doesn't even have to do with the TV show sometimes. It goes beyond that. We know that Picard's had some moments in it. We know a lot of other things had some moments in it. And there are so many people that are out there. I won't say so many, but a lot of people that still need to know what the definition of IDIC is. Okay. Right. And that's where a lot of us within the group, we sit and we look at it and we go, and I've heard a lot of people say it. How can they be a Star Trek fan if they feel that way? Okay. Because, and I love it when I hear things about Roddenberry and they all say this stuff, and I don't want to go into a whole lot of that, but, you'll hear them say, and I'm like, folks, you really need to look at what the show is about and what Gene wanted. Okay. And his idea of the future. And it seems like a lot of our real world things seep in. And then there are things said that should have never been said. If you don't like a show, you can have your opinion all you want. And you can bitch. There's a difference between bitching and bullying. Okay? You can bitch about a script. You can bitch about a director. You can bitch about that. It's when you take it to that whole other level. And it's real easy to do that. And I think some people don't always know when they're doing that. You know?
I think I think you hit it on the head. If we believe in the principles of Star Trek,
right.
One of them is IDIC. And so infinite diversity in the type of Star Trek shows. That doesn't mean you have to like them all.
No.
You have to watch them all, right? It just means that, and there are people that love Discovery. God bless them.
Leave them
alone. They love Star Trek. They don't love your Star Trek. That's okay. It's not my Star Trek, but you know what? They love Star Trek. And now there are kids watching Prodigy.
I get people who don't like TOS all the time because they weren't around during that.
It's so dated. It's so sexist. It's so ridiculous. But it's also the time it was in. And in the time it was in, it wasn't as sexist as the time it was in. It wasn't as dated as the time it was in.
For the time it was in. Yeah. Yeah.
And people just don't understand that. I mean, granted, we're three older gentlemen, not older gentlemen here.
Right.
And, we were witnessing these changes that have happened up until now. But you got to remember at the time, no one wanted to see an African-American woman on the bridge in a command position. No one wanted to see an Oriental man sitting at the control station. No one wanted to see the Russian sitting next to him.
Right, exactly. Yeah,
everyone loved the alien, but that's beside the point.
Yeah.
It's so interesting, the whole thing about Chekhov and the Russian. There's someone I wanted to come and play a role in Axanar, another fan film actor, producer, and I offered him a role, and he said, "Look, I can't because you're offering me a role who's Russian." And because of what's going on in Ukraine right now, I can't bring myself to do that. And I said, dude, I respect that. I respect that, right? I said, in my universe, in the Axanar universe, 300 years from now, we don't got a problem with Russians anymore. But I'm not gonna berate my good friend because he doesn't want to play a Russian. Okay, God bless you, right?
Yeah.
We have to understand that these right now we're not so evolved that we can rise above all of our petty differences.
Yeah, still does.
Yeah.
Does. Yeah, but so our whole idea, and like I said, is to be talking about it, but also taking some actions on it. And the actions on it is actually looking at what's out there and letting people know, and then actually being involved in maybe, hopefully, getting some mitigations going on and some talks about how can we solve a problem. And that's where Tab wants to be in. And that's when when you and I talked the very first time, and we've known each other for a second in time. We really have. I mean, I've known your name, and this is probably good. We talked about it. I know your name. I didn't know a whole lot about the problems that have been going on, because I saw the Prelude. I love the Prelude, and I did this. I went, can't wait till I see the next one, because this is really good. Okay, it's Star Trek. But the thing is that I don't know enough that I'm able to pull myself back. Now, what I have seen over the past few days, I see a conflict. Okay. And the whole thing is to talk about the conflict and say, how can we come together? How can we solve a mutual problem and make things better for the community? Because you know what? Tears fans apart. You got fans here and you got fans here, and you got friends here and you got friends there, and one friend's on this side, one friend's on that side. And what we do is we're just tearing ourselves apart over it, and then and we talk, the thing about it is it's the world right now too. It really is the world. We're tearing ourselves apart at the seams at times because we are in so much conflict. And so somebody has to come out and say, hey, you know what? Let's look at this stuff. You got something, you got evidence. Let us see it. Bring it to Tab. Send in an email. I don't care. As a matter of fact, I mentioned that on the post today. One of them, I said, send us the information. Okay.
Yeah. And if I'm on the wrong side of something, if I have a neutral third person to say, Alec, that was a little rough. I think you need to.
Absolutely. And
how are you going to grow? How are you going to learn unless you have people who you trust? And I've always told the story that back in 1980, I used to coach volleyball professionally, and one of my mentors was the assistant coach on the '84 USA men's team that won the gold medal. And they had their little cadre of coaches, their friends who were their critics as well. They would come in like every 3 months. They came in and they stayed for 3 or 4 days and reviewed everything, and then gave them feedback and told them. And I'll never forget. Bill told me, he said we would always listen because we trusted them. Right. So if you have a trusted source, if you have someone you can learn to trust, then you can let that person be a guiding beacon for whatever it is. If it's your behavior, or if it's someone who says, hey, you know what, you need to do X, or have you thought about this, or boy, that's real trauma. You really need to go see your therapist for that, or whatever the case may be. But having those people, and one of the things I found over the past few days is that for whatever reason, I really trust you, and I believe that I can send things to you, and if I kind of feel like you could call me on my shit, that's the agreeing point, that when we talked about this, is I'll look at you and say, yeah, that was a little rough. Maybe we need to back up, look at what we're doing, and things like that. I don't want to call me a personal image coach, but but I'm not scared to do it. I mean, first of all, I've known you for 2 seconds, so I have no problem looking at you and saying, hey, man, come on. I also don't have a problem looking at the other ones and saying, hey, come on. Okay. There's a point in time. And there's also a point that when you're looking at things and things go on forever and ever, all they do is fester.
It's never going to get any better. Somebody has to take that step. Okay. And whether it's you, whether it's one of the other groups or whatever, somebody's got to say, hey, you know what? I need to see what I've done. I need to admit what I've done. And maybe it wasn't meant the way that everybody has taken it, because everybody takes things differently. But there is passion, okay, and there's emotion that goes in, and especially in the Star Trek, man. I mean, all the fans have so much emotion about it. You know, this, I would say, in this genre, I think our fans are the ones that are, I don't want to put down any other genre, but I think our people with the love for the show, and that we feel like we really own it. Okay. And we feel like anybody coming into it to do anything with it should be listening to us, because we do own it. Okay. We own the fandom. The fandom's kept Star Trek. The fans kept it alive. If it hadn't been for the fans and the people and the Star Trek Welcome Committee back in those days, it wouldn't be here, because the push for the movie would have never happened and all the stuff that was going on. So we as fans have a lot in here. Star Wars never had that, right? They still don't. Their fandom has kept going because their movies kept going. They weren't canceled. Nobody canceled Star Wars, but our show got canceled, and we sat and we waited, but we wrote letters, and we did all kinds of things to get it back. So I think a lot of times that's why it gets so emotional with fans with Star Trek, that when somebody comes in and starts doing something and somebody doesn't feel that it's right, instead of backing up and taking a few deep breaths, we lurch, because we're protecting an old friend. That's what we're doing. I mean, you know, Ed and I talk about this all the time. You're protecting an old friend. Some of us, when we were young and we were bullied, that's all we had. We had Star Trek. Okay. Some of us who didn't have the greatest life as kids and didn't have parents, Star Trek was 4 o'clock every day on some channels. Okay. And it gave us a new outlook. So I think a lot of times we have forgotten that. Plus, there's a lot of new fans. And you know what? I really don't care if a new fan doesn't know what happened in episode 2 of Star Trek when Kirk walked into an elevator, or maybe somebody called it a different thing than a phaser. You know, maybe somebody called, oh, that's a ray gun. Oh, you can't call it that. Come on. Okay. New fans don't know. Okay. They really don't. But for our genre to survive, we have to have new fans. We have to have them out there. So a lot of times we'll see that when I'm out going through Facebook, I'll go through and I'll be like, why would you bully that person just because they don't know the same information you do? Some fans, and like I said, it goes back to a lot of fans, and we do feel like we own the genre. Okay. So if somebody else comes in and doesn't really know as much as I do, then you know what? Get rid of them. Or in some cases right now, we're seeing them bullied. We're just seeing them flat out bullied. And that's just wrong. And so that's why we're here yelling and screaming to the top of our lungs. We are Star Trek, and we don't do this, you know, and now you get my passion going, right? Because of this at that point. We've talked about that, about me and that passion, but I really feel like Tab can do a lot. We're a smaller group. Okay. We don't have 15 million members, and I don't even think I want to have 15 million members. I want to have people that really care. Okay. I want people who really want to make a difference, who want to be talking about what's going on and how we should solve it. And that's the biggest part of it. If I have 3 people that can sit at a table and do that, then I'm happy with 3 people sitting at a table and can do that. But I can tell you, as I did before with you, Alex, that I have no reservation coming to you and telling you. And when we first talked, it was over your last article, and I saw it. And to tell you the truth, like I said, I didn't know a whole lot about the whole thing. I didn't look at that stuff, you know, till recently. And then when I looked at that, then I started paying attention. And I went, okay, I need to go look at these other groups that are out there. And unfortunately, I've seen horde stuff all over the place. Okay. And that's all I'll say about it. But we just all need to realize what it is, put it in its place, and get on and be calm about it and start talking about it. You know, there's so many situations that are the same out there in the whole world at this point. we just need to look at, I hate to use a phrase of we just need to get along, but we do.
Well, it's just, and the thing is, it is just like what's happening in this country. And I'm not going to go, I'm not being totally apolitical at this point.
No.
We are, as a country, we are suffering from a challenge where that we are not getting along, and we are remaining in our silos, and we're getting bad information.
Yep.
Bad information leads to bad decisions.
Yep.
And you know, and you can't go demonizing the other side. You know,
right.
you can't, you may not like Donald Trump. That doesn't mean everyone who likes Donald Trump is an evil person, right? You may not like Joe Biden. That doesn't mean everyone who likes Joe Biden is a bad person. But unfortunately, the rhetoric in this country goes from 0 to 10 like in no time. And all of a sudden, we're accusing each other. I mean, look at the ridiculous conspiracy theories that large and what happens? And what happens is, oh, well, I'm just saying things. It's not like I'm inciting, whatever. And then all of a sudden, some guy who has who's slightly off balance goes and shoots up people's houses.
Yeah.
And then everyone, well, I just said something. I didn't tell him to go shoot up the house. And you gotta take responsibility for your language. You gotta take responsibility for your language.
Just to bring it back to Star Trek.
Yeah.
Deep Space Nine had an episode just like that, where Quark was talking about how the Dominion was going to come in and kill everyone.
Right.
And Morn goes ape crap and throws Quark into a corner or something. And Quark's like, but what did I do?
Exactly.
Your words matter, right? How we talk about people matter, right?
Absolutely.
And so the bullying situations happen because people don't care about people. That it's like, oh, you must blah blah blah. I've had plenty of the and listen, I was bullied as a kid. I was bullied when I was a sophomore in high school. Freshman, sophomore, I was bullied by upperclassmen, and it got ugly for a while. It got really ugly for a while. So you got to be cognizant of that.
The biggest thing right now is because there was also somebody on the page that said, "Can a bully who's a bully ever change his ways?" And I believe yes.
Yeah, sure.
And I'll say it right now. I've bullied people in my life. I've done it. I will admit right now, I've done it.
Yeah. Well, I think we all at some point, we go back, we can see we've done it. It's that we recognize it.
We recognize it and we change it.
And that's the whole thing, is that's why, like I said, I think a bully can be saved. But the first step has to be, hey, I realized I've done something wrong here. I realized that I may have said something that maybe was taken differently or something like that. And that's the problem, is sometimes things come out of our mouth and we don't think about them. And so the main thing is that if we can actually go back and look at the situation and say, hey, you know what? Yeah, maybe I was a bit of an asshole. Okay. Maybe I could have been better. Okay. Maybe, but the emotion and the passion comes in. Okay. But here's the other thing, is that if you're being bullied, okay, you do have the right to defend yourself. Okay. And that's the problem with a lot of people who are bullied. They don't defend themselves, right? They don't say anything back. They just take it.
Well, and the best victim is someone who can't fight back.
Right. Absolutely. And that's the whole thing, is, and a lot of people also don't realize that true bullies have a bit of an addiction to the chemical that is released when this happens. So they start getting addicted to the whole situation. And so it's the same thing as somebody doing a narcotic. They're addicted to what the brain secretes during this process, and it just keeps building and building, and it becomes an enjoyment at that point. So our biggest thing out there is to help some of those people. And that's the thing, is I just don't want to help the bullied. I want to help the bullies too. Okay. Just a funny story about it. So sometimes when I pronounce bullying, it doesn't come out right, and people think I say bowling. Okay. So
Those 9 pins deserved it.
You say bowling?
Yeah, bowling. bowling. I've had two people go, what do you guys Trekkers have against bowling? I like going bowling, and I have to go bowling because sometimes my pronunciation doesn't come out right. So especially if I'm passionate about it. So Ed will call me out and go, you did it again. People are going to think this is a whole different organization at this
That's
point.
a strike, Rex.
Right. Oh, boo. Very bad. But anyway, that's what we're trying to do here. We're trying to get the people together that can talk, but we're also trying to get the group of people that can go out and look at things and say, hey, this is what I'm seeing. How many times does it take? And I'll give one of our great guests that we've had over the past time is Sirach Lofton. Okay. And Sirach was actually on one of our podcasts. And Sirach said exactly how to put it. He goes, sometimes we need to call these people out and we don't do it. Okay. We also need to ask them questions when they are bullying us. Well, why do you feel that way? And a lot of times we don't. Our constant reaction is to go after the other person. Okay. And I get it. It's a defending thing. But at the same time, we have to also think about, start asking them questions. You sent me a video the other day, Alex. It was completely hilarious with the guy with the hands, the bowling hands. And he was doing the thing of that, somebody walks up to him and says, you stink. And the other guy goes, well, thank you for the hygiene advice. Those things, kind of trying to bring it down a little bit. But I think sometimes we have to ask people this because we don't listen. So why do you feel that way? Okay. And that was one thing that Sirach brought out very much so, is calling them out. And then in the conversation go, well, why do you feel that way? Why do you feel that this situation is this way? Why do you feel like I'm that way? Because that's what we don't do, is we don't have the crucial conversations around what's going on. Instead, it's that automatic wall that goes up that says, oh my God, they're attacking me. What you got to do is start asking questions to them, ask them why they're doing something. But that doesn't mean that somebody does not have the right to defend themselves against what is going on. Now, I'm not saying that you level back and punch somebody, but you do able to come back and say, this is my opinion. This is what I see. But what I'm seeing now all over is that there are that group of people that just enjoy. And it's been that way for years. I'm sure since mankind was around, the first caveman bullied the first caveman, But the whole thing is to be able to call it out and then ask those questions about why does somebody think that about you? Instead of just going in a totally different direction and then having issues at that point. So that's what we're hoping to achieve at this point. We definitely want people on board. We do watch the group site fairly well for who's there. The thing that I mentioned the other day, and you saw me put the little disclaimer, because as soon as somebody comes and says you should join an organization, you're in with them. Okay. I mean, that just because somebody said, hey, I really like these guys, why don't you go join that group? Okay. What immediately happens is people are automatically assuming associations. And we know what happens when you assume anything. Okay. And so I put it out yesterday on our site. I actually put out there that we're not affiliated with anybody, but every so often, somebody is going to recommend us. Okay. And that doesn't mean that we're in bed with them. That just means somebody likes what we do. The other thing that I didn't realize, and I had somebody tell me, and Dan Deavy with
Sure.
Jason, okay? Yep. We were talking about it. He said, Rex, let me tell you something. He goes, I hate to tell you that you may think this is a bad thing and all this. He goes, actually, it's a good thing because you know what? You just became relevant. You just became an organization and people now know about you and what you're doing. And he goes, if I had known that years ago with the problems he has had, he goes, if I had taken an attitude of realizing that and not curling up in a ball and being upset, who knows where I would be now.
Yeah, that's what he told me that. Yeah, he told me that the other day. And I totally agree. I think, and I think, I've really, I have a lot of close friends now who are in the LGBTQ community.
Right, sure.
and boy, you talk about bullying. I mean, it's great. And Dan Devey is the perfect example. I mean, yeah, he and I became good friends a couple years ago because we were like, I have the Axanar haters, and he's got another group out there that's total assholes to him. He's literally being bullied to this day, and that bully then jumped on my ass the last year. So I think, and you just have to wonder, geez, why is this so necessary? And there's a difference between trolls and bullies.
Oh, absolutely.
Right.
Absolutely.
And you deal with them differently too. I mean, I finally, it took me years, but I finally got to the point where I kind of ignore the trolls. It's just like, whatever, guys, you got nothing better to do. You go, I'm too busy doing shit.
Yeah, really. You're too busy trying to make a movie. So come on, guys. Why do I need to?
And at some point you just go, you get up every day and talk about me? Like, really? Don't
you love that you occupy so many people's heads?
Yeah.
I mean, really. I mean, you think about it. You're occupying their lives. And at some point, like I said, I'm not going to go real hard into it, but still, you're in everybody's heads.
Let me tell you, one of the funny things that when Rob Burnett was working with us, one of our directors, he had gone to film school with Bryan Singer, so he's friends with Bryan Singer, and one day Rob had said, "Well, Bryan, you're not on Facebook, you're not on Instagram, you're not on Twitter. Why?" And Bryan goes, "Because none of those things are going to get me where I want to go." He goes, "You're on those things. You're on Facebook all the time. You're on Twitter all the time." I said, "Rob, look where you are." And Rob was like, it's ironic that Rob acknowledged to me that he understood the point, but has never done anything about it. He's still on social media all the time. Meanwhile, where's Bryan Singer? Bryan Singer's off working.
Yeah.
He doesn't have to, and I always say this. I say, one of the inflection points for me was when I realized that all of my detractors, none of those people there weren't any great filmmakers in that group. There weren't any CEOs or doctors or lawyers or anyone who I would consider successful. You're like, okay, why? Because those people don't have time to do on a daily basis.
I'm worried about what they're doing. I get that. And that's one thing that when I have talked to bullies about it, and I've even told them, I said, you got to think about what you're doing. How much time are you taking up with this that you could be doing things for yourself? And some of them don't listen. Some of them don't listen, but there's quite a few that start thinking about it. Why don't you sit down and put the time, how much time you take doing all this stuff, and see how that comes out?
And then they develop like this social circle, so they're all reinforcing each other's hatred, And it's like, it's not healthy.
It comes to a group of bullies, and then they may be concentrated on one group of people or on one person. Absolutely, it just becomes that way. So just like there's the people who get together and talk shit about Star Trek, like they all complain together about whatever it is, Star Trek's too woke or whatever, which I find laughable. It's always going to be laughable that Star Trek. Anybody who knows it, somebody made a statement to me one time that Star Trek the people had to quit making Star Trek so political. And I'm like, it was political. It started out political. I mean, Roddenberry was political with what he did. Look at the episodes. One big one, go look at Omega Glory. Okay. He's making the difference between the communists and the United States, the Yanks and the cons. I mean, it's there. And that's what always kills me when I hear somebody go, oh, they shouldn't be political with Star Trek. Well, no.
What gets me is they say that and they don't look at the half white, half black and the reverse mirror image of it. How much in your face
I know, right?
do you have to be to say that's a race issue?
Right. Absolutely.
Right.
So
Exactly. Right. Yeah. And the funny thing, it was so in your face that it's the absurdity that makes you go, oh, I get it.
It's so in your face, but it's so hidden in the fact that they're both black and white. that the censors in the 60s say, oh, that's fine.
Yeah.
Well,
yeah.
you know, I grew up in a total rich white bread community on the North Shore of Long Island.
Mhm.
And but I grew up in Star Trek. Star Trek was my thing.
Mhm.
And so when we got our first black student at our high school, I was like, oh, he's black. I got to get to know this guy, because in my mind, it's like, hey, there's a Gorn at our school. There's an Endorian. It's like you always wanted to learn more about the people that were different, right? You know, I don't need to see another white Starfleet officer, but show me a Vulcan. Show me show me something different. And Star Trek creates that, you know, especially when you're young, it gives you that curiosity and that, you know, and it tells you that different is good, right? Different is interesting, and you know, and so I helped create, you know, besides the fact my parents were, you know, totally they were open to everything. There was I never grew up hearing a racist thing or anything. So it was you know, that and Star Trek, and I was open to all sorts of possibilities. So, by the way, we had to put one of the users in, and that's, thank you, Alexander, for putting one of the users
to a timeout.
A little too personal with Daddy Star Trek, who has a daughter who is gay, and so listen, we're all for you here, and I thank you, Daddy Star Trek, for being open about your daughter's sexuality, because it's all good. We all learn that, you know. Hey, Kirk was sleeping with aliens in the 60s. Gee.
Well, you know what? Kirk was into quite a few aliens.
And Riker slept with more in the 80s.
Yeah. Yes, he was. And what do you do for a living?
I work for a legal appeals firm. We law firms hire us to process and file appeals for them.
Oh, interesting. Okay. All right. Now, are you a native of New Jersey?
Born in Queens, New York, moved here in the early 80s.
We're in Queens.
Middle Village.
I spent my early years in Forest Hills.
Not far at all.
Yep. And I tell people the earliest memory I have like two really early memories from Forest Hills. One, I was playing on the playground. I just happen to remember that with my cousin was babysitting us. The other is my cousin took me to the top of our apartment building when the Beatles were playing Shea Stadium.
Nice.
Because she wanted to hear them. And of course, all I remember was all you could hear was screaming.
Yeah.
You didn't hear any music. You just heard screaming. And so, yeah, they're that's how old I am. I was born in 1960. So yes, I'm 62 years old now. So, well, great. Listen, we're hitting the top of the hour, and I want to thank everyone who came out. Frank, you got to get out here a little earlier. It's 7:59. You know, we started. Come on, Frank.
Yeah.
Come on, Frank. He's coming down to our shoot next week. So I'll remind Donnie Pearson. Donnie Pearson, the same thing. David Crosby, of course. Everyone's been talking about David Crosby passing. He was what a legend. What a true legend. So our hope, rest in peace. Our condolences to his family. Talk about, so we can talk a little bit about Star Trek. Private Little War. Well, Private Little War, was that? That was really, they didn't really define the. It's been that episode I haven't seen in forever, but they didn't really define that. That wasn't a race thing, was it? The war there. Omega Glory is about on the nose.
On your nose. It's post World War III, right down to the Yanks and the Kongs.
Right. It's totally. Yeah,
absolutely. So that one's just right in your face. Even Kirk, when he starts reading the preamble, absolutely it is.
It is one of the great. Although I got to say, Tracy was a great crazy starship captain.
Oh yeah,
they did crazy starship captains well back then.
They did.
That usually made them Commodores too.
Yeah, they did.
Decker, Tracy. Garth.
Yeah.
They did crazy well back, and then all of a sudden they all became wimps in the next, in the movies, in the Star Trek movies. Kirk always had to have a wimpy captain.
Well, that's what happens when the actors get more say in the scripts.
Yeah, right.
I'm still trying to think of the one guy that was, and I can't think of with of course the Nazi episode.
Of course.
Remember the guy that came down and changed it all, and the drugged drugged admiral that was stuck in the booth.
Yes.
Yeah, that's another one that you can put in there with those crazy kind of people.
Yeah, I mean, listen, Star Trek. Give credit to Gene. He was able to go he went straight on with some real serious issues. Think about it. Think about that. Could you make Patterns of Force these days?
No.
It'd be tough to make half of those episodes,
right? Yeah, I mean, I can't imagine. I mean, back then, I just saw on Trek Culture about how back then the actress, the blonde actress who was in Patterns of Force, didn't realize she was gonna be playing a Nazi.
A Nazi, yeah.
And had real problems with wearing a swastika. Yeah. These days, I imagine the uproar.
These days, you would not be able to put them. New York City had a advertising campaign for the Man in the High Castle, where all the subway cars had Nazi insignias put on all of them.
Really?
Advertising the show, and there were Nazi insignias because New York was part of the Nazi Empire at that point.
Wow.
The city went crazy.
I can. That's so funny. I haven't heard of that. I didn't hear of that.
Well, it happened. I think it happened over a weekend. The cars came out Friday. By Sunday, they were ripping out every advertisement.
Wow.
But the company that did what is it? Amazon Prime paid a lot of money to advertise everything and put everything in there. And there were Nazi signals there, and then the American Nazi Party, everything from the show, and people went crazy, and I don't blame them.
No, that's that. And by the way, I'm a huge fan of that show. I'm a huge fan of that show.
Well done show, bad advertising.
Yeah, I watched the. It was 4 seasons, I think.
Yes,
4
or 5. I have to go back.
Whatever it was, I've watched the last season of that show 3 times. Because it is just so impressive.
Yes,
such great. They brought together so many great actors for the last season of that show, and that is beginning to end just a really phenomenal TV show. But I get it. There are other things they could have done besides putting swastikas out there.
Yeah, it was a clusterfuck.
Yeah.
Oh my God.
All right. Well, we're gonna get Kobo Bunny says a great name. Axanar, any ideas on what could be next? What could be next for Axanar? We've got our shoot next weekend, and then we're off to the races for a big LA shoot to wrap it all up, and hopefully get Axanar out. I don't think we're gonna make Star Trek Las Vegas this year, but we might wind up, being ready in the fall. Which there's no big conventions really in the fall. But we'll see. And Todd Simo says, Todd just saw our new video. Please go watch our new video. I did an update about all the work that's being done on the bridge. It's already 3 days old and it's already outdated because we have new stuff coming in. There'll be another video on Monday, and then all of next week will be certainly from Wednesday on. We will be living at the studio, so. There'll be lots of updates, so please follow what we're doing. Hey, everyone, make sure you join the Trekkers Against Bullying Facebook group. Please join that and join in the conversation. I think there's a lot of good things to discuss there. One of the things I really am looking forward to having discussions with you guys about is let's break down on what is bullying. I mean, I started watching some really interesting bullying videos on YouTube, one of which I even sent Rex, and it was like, okay, I'm learning about, I know generally a bully is kind of like, as the Supreme Court said about porn, it's like, I don't know if I can define it, but I know it when I see it. Yeah. And it's interesting. It was really interesting to hear about what is the technical definition of bullying? And then, and the other challenge we have is people who are using that as a crutch. Oh, I'm being bullied. No, you're not being bullied. Yeah, someone's having an argument with you is not you being bullied. And,
Right.
And especially I think the other thing we can talk about is just the challenges, the mental health challenges that a lot of people have. And I'm not putting that in a bad light. Look, you just scroll through your Facebook page at any given time, and it seems like there's always someone who's, talking about their depression or talking about their anxiety or, struggling with bipolar disorder or something. And that is something we just cannot ignore. I mean, listen, before I had a protective order against one of the stalkers, one of the Axanar haters, my fiance and I had a protective order against her uncle, who's a paranoid schizophrenic and has literally threatened her mom and threatened her and threatened me. So, there are people that need legitimately help. And that's another issue as well. So, I mean, we could, I think there's more episodes that we could be doing on this topic here. Yep. And I think we could touch on a lot of different things, but I'm really interested to be on your group and talk about these things. Yep. and see how we can move the conversation forward and hopefully solve some problems, right? That's what you guys, I think on it. I really think, and Ed, I've talked with Rex a lot more than I've talked with you, but I think the thing that impresses me about Rex is his desire to do something, not just talk about it.
Right. As long as I've known Rex, he's always been a doer, not a sayer. Yes, for the pandemic, we had to talk a lot, not do a lot, but
yeah, we kind of knew each other a little bit before that, but the pandemic really brought us really close.
And Rex is an amazing guy, and I'm glad to be here with him. And I'll back him to the moon.
Quit him! Oh, I'm gonna cry it. Don't do it.
I'll be there for hold your head and just like Chicago.
I appreciate it, man.
Well, listen, thanks to you guys. Trekkers Against Bullying. It's on Facebook. Please check it out. Check out Tab Nation on YouTube. For their podcast, their live stream that they have. They have Michelle Hurd as a new episode, which I'm looking forward to and to seeing. And thank you guys. I know we'll be talking some more. I appreciate your efforts and thanks for coming out. To all the fans out there in Axanar land, thank you guys. This is going to be a really exciting week. We are fired up and we are prepared for just a dynamite shoot. It's crazy because I'm like at the point where if the shoot started tomorrow, I'd be ready. But we've got like 5 more days to really get ready, and the bridge is going to get finished, and we're going to clean up the studio, and it's really, really going to be exciting. So please, everyone, stay tuned to this channel. Stay tuned to the Axanar.com, and I want to thank Alexander for staying up late. Really appreciate it. Oh, there you go. There's Jens Knudsen. How are you? Prelude to Axanar is the puppet parody, the animated puppet parody about Prelude to Axanar, which we didn't do. Mark Largent did it, but you can see it on the Axanar channel. So everyone, thank you so much for coming out once again. Thank you to my guests here, Ed O'Connell in New Jersey, Rex Wood in Kentucky.
Yes,
Louisville, Kentucky. So thank you for both of them. Trekkers Against Bullying. I want to see those numbers. I want to see every Axanar fan join their group because it is such a great group. And then we will see you all. There will be no Axanar Confidential next week because we'll be live streaming from the studio, and Friday night probably we'll all be exhausted and probably have a few beers in us and crashing because Friday's the big day of the shoot, full bridge shoot, 12 people on set, another dozen crew, and probably half a dozen volunteers. That's the big day. Stay tuned for lots of great information about that. All right. My friends, Rex, my new friend, Ed. How are you? Well, Rex is a new friend too. Ed, look forward to meeting the rest of your team. Thank you, everyone out in Axanar land, and stay Starfleet strong.